Humans have had a very distinct impact on the environment, separate from all other animals, particularly within the last century and a half. Because of the industrialization and the rapid development of technology, humans have had a much greater capacity to alter the environment, and at a faster rate than all other organisms. And humans, because we change the environment faster than its natural rate, we have the potential of throwing ecosystems off balance and inflicting a lot of damage that may take hundreds or even thousands of years to recover. In this topic, we explore some of the most prevalent environmental consequences of human activity. In the carbon cycle video, we briefly talked about the consequences of burning fossil fuels, and remember how we said it throws the cycle out of balance. Basically, burning fossil fuels releases CO2 into the atmosphere at a much faster rate than plants can fixate the CO2 back out of the atmosphere. Because of this, the CO2 concentration in the environment has been steadily increasing over the past century. So the problem with this increasing CO2 is that CO2 is considered a greenhouse gas. What exactly is a greenhouse gas? Well, when the sun shines onto the earth, some of its rays are used as energy in plants, but some of its rays are reflected back out of the atmosphere. And the job of a greenhouse gas is to basically catch these reflected rays and emit them back into the atmosphere. And these are infrared rays. And infrared rays basically keep the earth warm. So the greenhouse gases are essentially making sure there are enough infrared rays in our atmosphere to keep the earth at a certain temperature. And this effect is called the greenhouse effect, because the greenhouse gases will let the sunlight in but keep it from going out, just like the glass of a greenhouse. So this should be a good thing. The earth needs to be warmed to a certain extent to keep organisms happy and ecosystems in balance. But Shakespeare was prophetic with his phrase, "too much of a good thing." Because of the increasing concentration of greenhouse gases, too many of the sun's rays are trapped and being returned back to the earth, and this is slowly heating the earth above its average temperature, and this is called global warming. This global temperature rise caused by greenhouse gases is called global warming. Contrary to popular media portrayals, CO2 is not the only greenhouse gas that we've been emitting to cause global warming. There are other serious greenhouse gases, such as methane. Methane also contributes to rising temperatures, and since 1750, scientists have recorded an increase of more than 30% in atmospheric CO2 and an increase of more than 140% in atmospheric methane. So activities such as deforestation are also cause for concern, because trees are incredibly important in taking CO2 out of the atmosphere, and deforestation has many other detrimental effects on the ecosystem, as we talked about in the rainforest video. Some real data for global warming. Here's a graph of CO2 levels that were measured and recorded twice a year by a scientist named Charles Keeling from 1957 to 2000, and this graph is called the Keeling curve, and it provides a crucial record for showing how the CO2 levels increased from 315 parts per million to about 370 parts per million in approximately 40 years, and all scientists widely accept this graph. Now, here is a graph of temperature change in Celsius over the past century and a half, and as you can see, there has been a steady increase in temperature of about 1 degree Celsius, and this may sound very small and petty, but having the entire Earth heat up 1 degree is actually fairly drastic. Already, polar ice caps have been melting, and that raises ocean levels, and this can lead to drastic changes in weather patterns. And it's also a flooding threat for a lot of coastal cities, including New York, Los Angeles, and Miami. So now, let's look at the CO2 graph with the temperature graph. And here's solid evidence that the increase in CO2 is directly correlated with the increase in temperature. Although the graphs don't have the same time frame, if you pick out 1960 to 2000 in this temperature graph, you can pretty much see that the patterns in the temperature similarly follow the general patterns in the CO2 levels. And so you see that there's this very strong correlation between the increase in CO2 levels with the increase in temperatures. You may have heard of the debate on global warming in the media, but this debate does not refer to whether or not global warming is happening. Scientists already unanimously agree on the fact. Rather, the debate focuses on whether we need to take action to prevent it, and if yes, which actions we should take. And such a debate is a worldwide concern and has gained international attention. Another negative impact that humans have had on the environment is that a lot of industrial processes have added toxins into the environment that can directly and indirectly have negative impacts on human health. So it's not just about the environment, it's more about the rebound effects onto humans. And a major concern is the use of toxins directly in the food industry. For example, pesticide and herbicide used on fruits and vegetables, or the hormones and antibiotics that are fed to chicken and cattle to accelerate animal growth. Scientific studies have shown that these hormones can build up in our body's fatty tissues and cause cancer or birth defects. So that's why there's been a rising movement in organic foods. And this example of the negative impact on the environment is also reflective of how the environment and humans are tied hand in hand. So anything that we do to the environment, yes indeed, pesticides and herbicides are also, overuse can also harm the environment, but it will also come back to harm humans. So when you talk about protecting the environment, saving the world, you're actually talking about protecting the environment that supports humans and thus protecting humans. So we've been talking a lot about pesticides, and what pesticides exactly are. They're chemicals that help kill undesirable organisms that destroy crops or carry disease. And as we talked about in biological magnification, the overuse of pesticides can come back to bite us because the pesticides can end up getting into our water systems and into the fish that people eat. And like toxins in the food industry, pesticide toxins can also cause cancer in humans with increased use. So this becomes a pretty big dilemma because on one hand, the use of pesticides can dramatically increase food production and it fights off disease, so it prevents disease contamination. But on the other hand, we already said that it can be really harmful to human health. So how on earth do you solve this dilemma? And there's actually a pretty awesome solution called biological control. And this involves different techniques that can get rid of pests without harmful chemicals. So there are 4 common biological solutions, and one, use crop rotation. So that's constantly changing the crops planted in the field, and that doesn't allow pests of a specific plant to settle down. Another method would be to introduce natural enemies of pests, such as birds or ladybugs that will pick out pests for you. The only problem with that is you have to be really careful to introduce animals that are already native to the area, because if you introduce an entirely new species, you can completely disrupt the ecological balance. 3, you could use natural plant toxins. Pesticides are basically synthetic plant toxins, so why not go natural? 4, you can use insect birth control, and that, for example, would be like male insects can be sterilized from exposure to radiation, and all these methods, all these biological control methods basically carry out the same job as pesticides, but also avoid the problems pesticides bring. So that is a major win-win. Another unfortunate byproduct of industrial processes comes in the form of acid rain. So the combustion of fossil fuels doesn't just release CO2 into the air. In fact, burning fossil fuels releases a lot of other substances into the atmosphere, and this includes nitrogen oxides and sulfur dioxides, and these are popularly called NOx and SOx. And what happens after industrial processes release them into the atmosphere is that when it rains, these pollutants are sort of dissolved into the rainwater, and this is what forms acid rain. So in extreme cases, acid rain can do pretty severe damage, and it can kill off plant life or disrupt the aquatic ecosystems. But in lesser forms of acid rain, it can also be a source of damage because over time, these SOx and NOx can build up in the ecosystems. And in addition, the acidity of the rain can slowly erode away stone architecture, including important historical landmarks or statues. So it's important to understand all the consequences and be aware of all the consequences of all your actions and the industrial processes and the actions of the human population.